Hey, this is Les from the TV Dudes. As part of our coverage of ATX Television Festival Season 8, I was lucky enough to sit down with the creator, producer, and some of the cast of Men in Trees. They were at the festival for a reunion of the show, and it was wonderful to sit down and chat with creator Jenny Bicks, as well as producer Antonia Ellis, and cast members Suleka Mathew and Cynthia Stevenson. I hope you enjoy.
Some little chat yesterday from some of my network counterpart people who were like, "Why would
the time
we bring
could
it back?
not be
time
more
could not be better."
right." And it's kind of timeless. Like, there's nothing that says that was 8 years ago, however many it was. Yeah,
I know. We were ahead of our time. I was thinking about this morning. We had all these. This is all the stuff that I'll probably be saying in an hour, but I've been thinking about the fact that we had issues that we were bringing up that weren't. It was before kind of TV was woke, but we were still woke. Like Suleka played.
Was it?
No, not nice. It was 2007. Yeah, off by 10 years, but give or take.
It's only a decade.
That's fine.
I was a ninja.
You were
talking to
not.
the Archer panel earlier, and somebody said something about 2001, and everyone else was like, "I'd have been 4. What are you talking
what are you
about?"
talking about?
And I'm just
Aging
sitting
us
there
all.
like, I was out of high school. Stop telling me you're 4.
Well, we have aged just a little bit since 2008, but we haven't. No, but we had Suleka played a prostitute, a woman, a hospitality lady, right? A sex worker.
And she was married.
We had single moms. We had interracial love stories. We had a white child of a black man. We had immigration stories. We were telling all those stories.
Did.
We had a black gay man. I mean, we kind of had it all. And yet, I think what was good about what we did, if I may say so myself, is that we didn't hang lanterns on it. It was just part of the community, and people.
Favorite way.
It's the second time today I've heard someone say
hang a lantern on it.
Yeah.
It's a, you know what? It's a writer's room phrase, which
it's going to be odd. Just go ahead and lean into it.
Yeah. You know, it was all about a misfit village of people who were very different from each other, but all had to get along.
That came together.
And
I would imagine we ran the political gamut too.
We
Wasn't
did.
John Amos's character different from right?
Yeah.
Was he was? I feel like he was. Yeah, I think he was.
So we played with a lot of different topics, but I think we handled it. We didn't want it to be a topic show. We just wanted it to be about a nice place to spend some time.
I run another podcast. This interview is going to be for the TV Dudes, which we're local. We do weekly TV crit and interviews. I do another podcast that's just about single season shows called The Good Die Young. And the two shows that I've covered so far is Middleman and Happy Town, and they both were about that same era, 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And it seems like that was just prior to second screen viewing truly being a thing where people could water cooler this on Twitter. And I feel like there's a window of shows that could have succeeded, but the audience didn't quite have a way to talk about it yet.
Yeah.
I mean, the internet was there, but unless you were on bulletin boards about it or something.
And we had a viral fan base. I mean, they managed to get their word out, even though, I mean, honestly, it was like on Facebook. Because it was before people were using Twitter. It was
like
before
in like communities, right? And
online excited communities of.
They were wonderful. They were building trees for the show, right?
They were sending
saplings.
Like, we planted a ton of trees. They bought all these trees at the end to try to keep the show going. But you're right, it was right before that, and we suffered from a bunch of things. But one of them also was the writer's strike. So the writer's strike happened right in there, and then even before that, they'd moved us around so much in terms of where we were. We were talking about this, but our time slot moved everywhere. That's exactly, we could not find purchase.
It's a really odd slice of television right in there where you can look at shows whose plot lines took a weird left turn or something, and it's an outside pressure. It's that
they had
there
to
was that writer's strike here.
Yeah.
Oh, right. They were trying to get the scripts done.
And we never had, in other words, we never actually, I mean, I suppose we were canceled because we're not on the air anymore, but it's not like we knew we were ending and got to end the show. The show just ended. It never came back. But we didn't know that last episode would be our last episode.
That's right.
It ended up being kind of if you can say something's a great way to end a show. I mean, it was like a town talent show, so it was kind of this great everyone coming together and performing, and we had a good time. But we were treated very poorly also by a network that didn't know what to do with us because we were different from. They were going to put us with Ugly Betty. They were going to premiere us with Ugly Betty on Friday nights. Then 2 weeks before our air date, I got a call from Steve McPherson, who was then head of ABC, saying, listen, here's the good news. We are still premiering you on Friday nights, but we've moved Ugly Betty to Thursday nights, and you're going to premiere after reruns of Grey's Anatomy. So we never had a lead-in.
That's not a lead-in.
That's right.
That's not a lead-in. And yet, we persevered. And yet, we had more... the viewers that we had then would win any night now for television.
Isn't that crazy?
And that's how TV is.
And that's why it's so tempting to be like,
Let's bring this back. Yeah.
It's the show. I've done a few shows. I've had the luxury of that, but it is the show I get asked all the time about. What happened?
Yeah, me too.
Where did it go?
I do too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I did the woman at the airport yesterday.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my God, I love that show. And then she was hoping it was coming back.
Well, maybe we can make it so. Stranger things have happened.
And it was so.
And in fact, we have, the irony too, we were talking about this, but we made 36 episodes, which now would be like for a streamer, that's like
three seasons.
Four seasons of a good show.
God, that's right.
So we could certainly bring it back, and they could have a library of
like
100 episodes and not too long. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
We did a lot of episodes, but it really was, it suffered so much from being moved around and not ever having, we never had a lead-in. Yeah. We were also not owned by ABC, so we were a Warner Brothers show.
That's right. So we were
for
like extra
ABC.
expensive for them.
Okay.
Right.
And so Ugly Betty was an ABC show for ABC. And so there was certainly a kind of mistreatment of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back at creating the show and when it started, what was the original plan? What themes and what show were you wanting to put on the air?
Right. It was pretty much the show that it ended up being. I wanted to tell, ABC came to me and said, listen, we have the rights to this. It was a dating magazine called Alaska Men. So it was literally, if you're a lady in the bottom
12
states,
breeding men.
here you go, come on up.
Amazing.
And I said, I don't think I want to do a show about a dating magazine. I'd done Sex in the City. I wasn't really interested in that, but I was like, I'm really interested in telling a story about a small town and kind of a wish fulfillment of what happened if you just ran away from what your life was and ended up in this world where, in fact, men outnumbered women greatly, because that is true in Alaska. And some other states. But I really wanted to tell the story about a community. Like, that to me was the most important thing. How does a community come together? How does it come apart? And how do these very different people work together to make a place work? Through the eyes of Marin, who happened to be a New Yorker like me.
Something that surprises me about the show when I go back and watch an episode now versus when I first saw it then is my expectation of comedies has changed. I've seen more single cam comedies. I've seen more serious half hour. Whereas originally, I think I first turned on Men in Trees and I thought, well, it's shorter. It's going to be quips and zingers, and it's not. It's a loving show about all of these characters, and I think part of my brain wants to make it a dramedy, more different format. And were there conscious decisions made playing with how serious you wanted the show to be about these people's lives versus the format?
Well, it was a 1 hour. It wasn't a half hour. But it was a weird time. Again, a really interesting time for TV because there weren't that many 1 hour dramedies. Like, I remember Ed.
Yeah,
Ed was one that kind of was the first one that I watched. And I guess you could say, 30-something was probably more like This Is Us is now. Like, 30-something had less overt comedy.
Yes, yeah.
We
Ed
were...
kind of had that whimsy, silly...
Yeah. I wanted to do something that bridged
Ally
the
McBeal
two.
too, right?
Ally McBeal.
Yes.
Yeah, Ally McBeal. That was more goofy than our comedy, obviously. We don't have a dancing baby. Didn't have a dancing
Not
baby.
yet.
But maybe
Not
the
yet.
reboot.
Reboot.
If you want a dancing baby.
We will give you a
can
dancing baby.
Think how far dancing baby technology has come.
Think of that.
Oh my God, yes.
We could get an actual, I'm sure at this point there is
There
somebody
is a
trained their
baby who
baby
is
to dancing.
Absolutely.
In fact, I probably saw it yesterday on YouTube. Yeah. But I wanted to do, and it was hard, by the way, to convince them because they, meaning the network and the studio, because they hadn't seen a lot of that kind of 1 hour. They were like, what's the procedural element? We had to have, which is
What's
where
your
the
monster of the week
radio
here? Yeah.
station came in because they needed something that
was
would
like
thematically
a
tell them what the
Were they
show...
just not seeing the series engine of it, or?
Yeah, they weren't seeing that there was an engine, and they needed. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with having that engine. It did help us thematically, and I like to tell thematic stories, but it was really hard for them to get their head around at first. Like, wait a minute, so 1 hour, but it's really about characters. It's not about someone being murdered every week or someone having a heart attack. And it was a different kind of 1 hour than they had seen. But, I guess you could argue Ugly Betty, too, because that was a 1 hour that was the same year.
Character.
It felt so much more comedic. It didn't
Than our
Ugly Betty,
lean
yes.
into the,
No.
the truth.
They were broader.
Yeah,
they were broader, and
I
we
know,
were more.
I know Ugly Betty carried on some serious themes, but I think of it as a more lighthearted show.
Lighthearted.
It's a
Lighthearted.
comedy.
Yeah.
It's a 1 hour comedy. We were a dramedy, or as I used to say, what did I say? A common mama.
Common mama. Oh my God, I love that so much more.
But I do think we told like serious stories, but we also had great moments of, especially. I mean,
Like lightness and
like
quirk
this
and-
one with
yeah.
comedy was crazy.
Yeah,
She's like
it
a
was
comedy
some-
machine.
We did have a good cast.
We had a
Very good
fantastic cast, and they were really well trained. I mean, these were not actors that just showed up and phoned it in.
And I think to your point of like, we're ahead of our time, it's like you put together a team that represented the world in which we live today and did then too, but a lot of shows were not doing that. We're not reflecting the world around us. And I loved that. Like, I loved that everyone looked like a human being. It was not a bunch of
Right.
supermodels of
Right.
one color or one age
Yes.
or one size.
Yeah.
We really did, I think,
That's true.
embrace
It's funny.
diversity
It's like
in a
it
full
was a
way.
wish fulfillment, but in a super grounded way. In other words, you weren't being dropped into a world of good-looking 25-year-old men and models.
Yeah.
You were being dropped into a world of real people, but the wish fulfillment was being around people who cared about who you were.
And in this getaway sort of
Yeah.
setting that's
Yeah.
beautiful around you. We
Yeah.
didn't need to be like catwalkers.
I remember.
Some of us,
But that would have been season 3.
Yes, we would bring catwalkers.
Yes.
I remember looking at Jen once and saying, "This is really amazing. Like, these actors are incredible. And how did you know? Like, to find these people, this is and that there would be such chemistry." And Jen just looked at me and went, "Well, thanks for all showing up." And it was just one
Yeah.
of the
It was lucky.
nicest, like, affirmations of like, "Well, I hoped for it. Here you are."
Yeah, everyone who showed up for each role was the perfect person for each role. There was never a moment where I felt like,
struggle.
and it was odd that way. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't. I mean, we've all been on many
Yeah.
shows at this point, and
doesn't
you've
always
seen
happen.
some situations, and you've watched many shows where you're watching going, that person's just not the right person. And I think also I started to write the parts based on who these
Once you knew,
actors
quickly,
were, what they wanted to do, what they could do, what I wanted to challenge them to do, and they're all so good they could do it.
did you have any spots where you changed a character after having known the actor?
The actor? I think there were some actors who did the most interesting, like Emily Burgle was so fantastically, she was kind of magical in the way she performed the part of Annie, and she has this kind of ethereal quality to her, at least in what she brought to the character. So I think I wrote her maybe a little more, I could take her to places that were more ethereal. I think for Shauna, I gave her more comedy because I was like, oh wow, she can really do comedy. For Suleka, she could tear your heart out. Like, she did something with a part that most people watch. Like, what's amazing to me is in 2008, we weren't getting letters saying there's somebody on an ABC show on a Friday night playing someone who's selling their body for sex. And that's not an easy thing to get away with. And I think it's because people said they saw themselves in her.
Yeah.
Like, she was able
Such
to
humanity.
bring truth to it.
So much.
So each person, I think, John Amos, he was so funny. You could sit him at a bar and give him one line, and he would kill it. So you didn't have to give him
have to do anything.
much,
Right.
Which was all right with him.
Yeah,
because he was just happy to be
jump
there.
off his boat, say his couple lines, and jump back on.
Yeah, and jump back on. So I think everybody, Anne had a brittleness in a great way, had this kind of New York energy already. So again, I didn't have to write as much to what she was doing. She kind of brought it.
She's also incredibly
Talented.
Oh,
she's
an amazing
such a
actress.
gifted.
She can take you
Performer.
down drama and then swing you over
Yeah.
to comedy
Yeah,
and then
she's pretty
back to
exceptional.
neurotic
Yeah.
angst. And she's a genius.
And they're both sad they couldn't be her.
Wag
They're
the
both
Dog.
doing
I
other
think
things.
Wag the Dog and 6 Days, 7
Yeah.
Nights are really what
Yeah.
won me over.
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
a crazy
Wag
pants
the
good
Dog,
actor.
my head
Yeah.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a
she's-
friend that still quotes her Like, what are you going to do now? Hire a convict whale shark?
She's amazing.
Still yell that.
She's totally amazing.
She's got it all, and we were really lucky also to have her. So it just all, and then James came out of nowhere. Yeah. James literally came to like an open, I'm saying open casting call, but I went to a pre-read because I was going to be out of town, and he happened to walk in. So he was just, and he walked in with like a big fisherman sweater on. I was like, well,
we're done. We don't need to do anything else.
We're done.
And scene.
Yeah.
And that is actually the hardest part to cast, because especially when you're casting in LA, which is what we were doing, so many guys walk in with these like big fake teeth and the coiffed hair, and they're very metrosexual looking. And the thing about Jack is he was a guy from Alaska. Like you had to believe this was just a normal guy. And James actually was like he was from Nova Scotia. Like he actually was Canadian and was that guy. And thank God.
He was great too.
Because that was a part that did not have, I couldn't, if it wasn't him, I don't know who it would have been.
He was not going to come from central casting.
He was not going to be the typical guy who walks in to try to play a hunk.
Yeah.
He had to just embody hunk.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah.
And the way his like was able to soften her edge, like it was great. They were great together.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you first thought of the show when you auditioned and were coming aboard? When you first got to read it, did you see how special it might be?
Yeah. I think I did. I think because for me reading the. We really just read our bits. No, reading the I did read the whole pilot. You do know
that she was in it with you, right?
I do. I met her up in the bar just a moment ago. But yes, it was all very familiar. For an actor, the biggest thing for us is if it feels comfortable, like when you say it, it feels familiar and comfortable in the mouth. And all the characters were so like jump off the page. And for me, my character just felt like a glove fit. And so that's always a joy. And not that common.
Yeah. It felt like we were in a time, too, in which, because there was no cable, there was no subsidiary streaming services, we were on network, right? So at that time, it felt like it was divided into three little camps. There was procedural work, there was comedy, and then there was family or evening dramas, like elongated soaps. So when you found one that was kind of this blending of, and really, truly, it's one of the few romantic comedies at that time, or even still. You didn't see a rom-com on TV.
That's true.
So that's why I knew, oh my gosh, this is special.
Yeah, a rom-com.
And
for sure.
I wish there were more. I think it's hard to do a 1 hour rom-com. I mean, they had Cupid, which was also
twice.
around that same time twice. The second time, I don't think it worked either. Obviously, it's not but...
No, I'm still stunned. I think Rob Thomas is still stunned.
Yeah.
They made that show twice.
Yeah.
Like, let him do that show twice.
Yeah, they tried. And I think
it's a really interesting premise.
Yeah.
It was sort of like Love Boat.
Right. Because people still want that escape. Like, we still have those holes to fill. We just have to figure out how to fill them.
Hulu's Lock and Key that they're about to do is the third attempt on that pilot.
Yeah. I had a friend who was in one of the versions of it.
Yeah, it's hard to know which version. Yeah, it's God bless them. I'm glad that they can commit to those shows. I think if things had been different, we would still be run longer.
It's true.
Yeah,
if we had
there was
seen
no
some
real there was no real reason.
Well, as you said earlier, it's not a date. It doesn't date the thing. You guys aren't about some particular piece of tech or piece of science fiction or something that sets it in some period. People still have friends. People still have lives they want to run away from. People still have meet the other people that are running from lives.
Yeah,
right.
If you went back up to Elmo right now, it'd be exactly the same. That bar would still be there.
I mean, it would be exactly the same.
Right around that. Things don't change in those kind of towns. If they do, it takes an awful long time. There'd probably be like one food truck that someone's trying to figure out. But other than that, But other than that, I think it very much stays the same, and that's the beauty of smaller towns is beauty and pain of being.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I came from a small town. And it sucks to go home and be put back in that role.
Right.
I think too that the world is a troubling and difficult place, and there's 540 scripted shows right now, but there are very few where there's a gentle place to land. And I remember our audiences so needed that at that time. They just needed like a reprieve from hardship and from the day to day. And there was this little sweet town, which is actually microcosmal. Like it's small towns are big towns. Like cities are,
no, they
you know,
represent-
countries.
Right. Which, again, like the timeliness of needing to, like, we have half the country needing to put their brains in a small town to understand what that small town is. And we need those small towns to understand the issues and the diversity and the wonderfulness of the bigger towns. So that is kind of what we were 7 years ago. And
10 years.
what we need to go.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. It was
My time math is
2007.
contagious. Yeah.
Okay.
What is
It's 2020 right now, right?
Yes.
Good.
Right.
Okay, I've got
Skip
that figured
ahead,
out.
please.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm panicking.
And
It's not, is it?
No, it's not. But it is. I mean, people want. I mean, especially now, you just want to escape. You don't. I can't even watch the news. It's too upsetting to me. So
I had a couple of shows after 2016 that I just couldn't keep going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was
don't
too
want to watch
much.
vicious
Yeah.
politics or whatever.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah,
It's on-
right.
It's on my real news. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good on that. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for taking out time
yeah,
today.
sure.
I've-
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.